Ladies and gentlemen, we take pride in presenting
In color. My favorite Marshall.
My Favorite Vinyl with Don Tanner.
And good morning. This is WEFT Champaign-Urbana, and the show where we welcome in CU movers and shakers to chat and play their favorite songs. It's a needle on the record celebration of vinyl and community. So we thank you for joining us on this Monday morning, and we always do each and every week as we have a special guest. And our special guest this week is artist Phil Strang. How are you?
Pretty good, Don. Glad to be here.
Yeah, well, we appreciate it. We get people out of bed very early.
I'm usually up this early, but not functioning.
Gotcha. Well, you had a little tea, and we got to talk and wake each other up here a little while ago. But thanks again. I mean, you have such a rich history here, and we're going to get into that. So much to talk about. But let's start with. I mean, you're an artist. You're an entrepreneur. You've done so many different things. We're going to start with where you started up, maybe some early influences for art and for music.
Sure. Well, I grew up in Flushing, Queens, New York.
Yeah.
But my parents both were from Illinois, and they actually met here at the University of Illinois before my dad went into the Army in 42, and my older sister was born here in 46.
Yeah.
And then they moved to New York so my dad could go to Columbia College, and that's where I was born.
And so early on, we had talked off the air a little bit how you would it sounded like me a little bit. You'd play radio station a little bit, or
Yes.
put together your music charts and talk about that and what you listen to.
My dad was a musician, and he played big band jazz up until the mid '50s, and then he decided to quit that and become an opera singer, which he did.
Really?
But so I listened to, pop radio, rock and roll radio.
Yeah.
And my dad and I did not see eye to eye about music at all, which is probably normal. So yeah, I mean, I listened to radio.
Well, he was Pavarotti probably, or maybe before Pavarotti.
Before Pavarotti,
Okay.
yeah. This would have been 1955 through 60, when I would write my favorite songs down, and I'd made up my own name for a radio station, WPAS, my initials, and I'd have a top 10 every week, and I had friends by 7th, 8th grade, and we would just talk about our favorite songs. And,
Right. Put together your charts.
Yes.
And things
yes.
like that. Early billboards or top of the pops, was that
I think
what it was?
Record World was one of the first magazines that I got.
Oh
Yeah.
wow. So the AM radio was big.
AM radio was the only choice back then.
Yeah.
It wasn't until, I think my freshman year of college, 67, when FM radio started to catch on in New York, and then eventually everywhere.
Yeah. And so musically, I mean, we're going to start with the song that is a classic duo. Talk about the Everly Brothers.
Sure.
Why the song's important to you.
I had a sister 3 years older than me. When I was about 6 or 7, I would play her 45s.
Yeah.
And the one that I loved the most was Kathy's Clown by the Everly Brothers. And I just loved their sound overall.
Mm-hmm.
I always wished I could be Phil Everly,
in looks and voice.
Well,
right?
yes, and financially, no.
Exactly. Well, let's give it a listen. Everly Brothers. This goes back to 1960, and the album is A Date with the Everly Brothers is what this came from. Kathy's Clown on WEFT, my favorite vinyl. Listener supported, volunteer run since 1981. That's us, WEFT at 90.1 FM. And Kathy's Clown from the Everly Brothers, Phil Strang, one of your early favorite songs growing up.
Yes, it was. Everly Brothers were somebody I really cared for. As a matter of fact, I think the second single I ever personally bought was Bird Dog by the Everly Brothers.
Oh, yeah.
I was into novelty records.
She's a bird.
kid.
She's a dog.
Yeah.
She's a bird dog.
Yep.
So we were talking again off the air a little bit about some of the other songs that you liked early on.
Well, like I said, I got turned on to music by my older sister, and another song that I really liked that she had was Ray Charles, "I Can't Stop Loving You," which was, at the time, I didn't even know what the album. We didn't know albums. We didn't deal with albums. 45s
Sure.
49 cents, I could buy a 45. That was,
I remember.
I had to save up my allowance for 2 weeks to be able to do that.
And what did you have to do for your allowance? Take out the trash?
Oh, yeah. Take out the trash.
Didn't we all? So Ray Charles and I Can't Stop Loving You, that's the Everly Brothers we played was about 1960. This is 1962. And talk about this song a little bit.
Okay, well, the song was originally written by, was written by Hank Williams. And I think Ray Charles grew up in the South, and he was heavily influenced by the country music of the time.
Sure.
But his record company didn't really want him to do a country album because he was an R&B singer.
Right. Yeah, he didn't cross that line back in those days.
No, not at all. But he did such a great job with this song that they made it into a #1 hit, which crossed over to everybody.
Yeah, it was I Can't Stop Loving You in the album, Modern Sounds in Country and Western. He persevered and got that country western in there. Let's give it a listen here on WEFT, My Favorite Vinyl with Phil Strang.
I can't stop loving you.
Of dreams of yesterday.
WEFT 90.1 FM and Ray Charles, Don Tanner here on a Monday morning. Thanks for joining us. This is My Favorite Vinyl, where we bring in special guests and to talk about their lives, their influence, and their musical favorites. And Phil Strang, artist extraordinaire, is here with us. And Phil, you mentioned that as a kid you would have your own charts. Music charts, and Ray Charles was #1 with
number
the bullet?
one for a long time. Yes. And though interesting, the first record I ever bought with my own money was "Who Wears Short Shorts" by the Royal Teens, because I saw them on the Dick Clark show.
Oh yeah.
And then
What influence his show had?
I'm sorry, what?
Well, I said what the influence his show had was
amazing. From
incredible.
25, 30 years I think he was on.
And I know that song. Again, we're talking off the air. Some of the stuff we talk about off the air is even better than the stuff we talk about on air. We just need to record everything. But I know it from the Haynes commercials growing up in the 70s.
Much later on.
Yeah, much later
And then I said the second record I ever bought was Bird Dog by the Everly Brothers.
Yeah.
But the big one was, the fifth record I bought was the Chipmunk song. Yay.
Like you said, you like the novelty song. Later on, Convoy, probably from Van McCoy. Was,
much later.
Much later. So
Yes.
what brought you here to Champaign-Urbana?
It's a good story, too, because my parents were both from Illinois.
Yeah.
They met here at the University of Illinois. My dad went to the Army in 42, married my mother just before he left, came back here and got his degree, and in 46 my older sister was born here. And then they went to New York so my dad could go to Columbia for grad school.
Yeah, wow.
And he played big band jazz back then. Played with Larry Clinton, then eventually he played with Sammy Kaye.
Wow.
And that's what I grew up with, that influence. But I didn't really enjoy his music, and he didn't enjoy mine very much either.
As is quite often the case.
Often the case.
Generationally.
Yes, very much so. And but I bought 45s. I made up my own. WPAS was my radio station for Philip Andrew Strang.
Yeah.
And I had some friends at school who did the same, and we would swap stories and tell everybody the new songs we'd heard. And
Sure.
I listened to WMCA and WABC in New York because there was only AM radio back then.
Absolutely.
And those were great years. And then I came here in 1967 to go to the university.
Gotcha. What were you going to study here?
Let's see, you want the first year or the second? I started out in architecture.
Okay.
I decided it was way too intense. 22 hours of credits meant 30 hours of class.
Wow.
And that's what I did my first semester. I said, there's no social life, there's no fun.
Yeah, right.
So I got out of architecture and went into accounting, only because I thought everybody needs accounting 101 no matter what you do.
Yeah.
And I was right. And two, I didn't want to take a foreign language yet.
Okay.
Then I switched to psychology. I don't know why, but I started working at WPGU back then.
Yeah.
And,
great training ground for generations of young radio professionals.
It was, and I was not even a radio on-air personality. I helped select music.
Oh.
So I was assistant music director for the first year.
That's cool.
And then in '69, I became the music director. And also in '69, we started the Undergraduate Student Association Record Ordering Service, which eventually...
Did you ever abbreviate that into
yes.
acronyms?
What's funny is we were in the Illini Union, but we were told we had to leave after 6 months because we weren't allowed to start a business on university property that competed with local businesses.
Interesting.
And Discount Records was not happy.
Okay.
And so we moved to the basement of the YMCA on campus.
Okay.
And we were there for a year and a half. But all this was happening while I'm in school, while I'm switching majors. Third major was psychology, because you couldn't get into radio and TV until you were a junior back then.
Really?
And that's what I really wanted to do. I decided radio and TV. That was my direction.
And why not on the air at PGU? I know there was sometimes a 2-year wait.
Yeah,
to get on.
Mostly I was kind of nervous about it. I didn't really like my voice.
Mm-hmm.
It was more fun just to listen to all the music. When I became the music director, I went and listened to 50 albums a day from the PGU's collection, and in a year and a half, I listened to 1,600 albums.
Wow.
Of which
you prefer to curate.
Well, and a lot of them, right. And a lot of them, I hear one song, I go, I know that's not going to, the Les Page Orchestra, that's never going to get played.
Right.
But
right.
other songs, it'd be like, oh my God, Hot Rats, Frank Zappa, this is incredible.
Put it on right now.
Yeah.
So the and I can't even remember what you said about the name of the first business that you started. It was so long,
right.
But it became, what did it become?
It became Record Service. So the
Iconic.
Undergraduate Student Association Record Ordering Service. And when we moved to our third location, which was right next to the Deluxe on campus, which of course is not the Deluxe anymore. I forgot what it's called now.
I didn't know you were over there.
Yeah, that was our third location. We had to have a real name, and we incorporated because we weren't part of the university anymore.
Yeah.
And so we had to pick a name. And my suggestion was Record Service, period. Somebody else suggested Honest Phil's Record Store. And I said, absolutely not.
You're selling cars and records.
Right. And then the third choice was Middle of the Block, M-O-B, Mob. And that kind of got voted down too. So we went with Record Service, the shortened version.
Well, what an iconic record store. I mean, it was the best record store that I ever experienced. And even before I could drive, my buddies and I were jumping on the bus.
And what year was that?
This would have been, when could I drive? Talking 70s probably.
Because, we went, from there we went to 704 South 6th Street, and then we went to the corner of 6th and Green.
Okay.
And we were there for 4 or 5 years before we moved to our final location in 1981.
By Zorba's and Mabel's. Okay, that's where I used to go.
When we incorporated the business, we had 14 people who worked at the store. We were all equal co-owners.
Yeah.
Everybody worked. You got paid. I think we got paid $1.50, maybe $2 an hour, and we'd have meetings every week to make decisions. And of course, you had to all agree, which meant a lot of things didn't change rapidly. Because you had
it's
to talk
tough.
Somebody into it.
You have a lot of folks. Well, let's play one of the songs from Record Service. Again, we were talking off the air about this particular song and this particular album.
Yes. Okay. So Elvis Costello, My Aim Is True. This is a little later on, but when this came out, it opened my eyes to a lot of things. I'd been in a band before, I'd written songs before, but this new wave was something else. And we had the import version of it that we sold at the store.
Yeah.
And it was selling so well, I convinced our Sony rep that he had to take a copy and talk to the people at Sony about signing this artist, which they did about 3 months later. I won't say it was my credit. I'm sure a lot of other people were telling him the same thing.
Yeah. It didn't hurt.
No. We were a tertiary market, so we had some important concept about breaking new artists.
Yeah, well, this one's from 1977. The album is My Aim Is True, and it's a classic song. Elvis Costello and Allison. WEFT.
My aim
WEFT 90.1 FM and Elvis Costello. Do need to let you know that support for My Favorite Vinyl is provided in part by CU CD and Vinyl in downtown Urbana. New and used CDs and vinyl, including rare imports and limited releases. SEEYOU CD and Vinyl, located behind the Elm City Roastery on Main Street in Urbana. Also CU CD and Vinyl on all socials. So, Phil Strang, our guest today on My Favorite Vinyl. With Don Tanner, and so you saw Elvis Costello, and
Yes,
what epiphany did you have?
It was about 1978. He played at a club called Smile in Chicago.
Yeah.
And the band, I mean, he was young, the band was young. They were obviously a bit nervous because this is their first big show. And I loved everything they did. And everything they did was exactly what's on this album. They didn't do anything else. And I thought,
That's all they had.
I could put a band together. I'm a songwriter. I could do this.
Yeah.
And that's what turned me into writing more songs and getting musicians and finally putting a band together in '79.
Wow.
Called the Rocking Clones.
Now, were you so at that time? There was a lot of pop and new wave. Was that
New
your
wave
influence?
was definitely the influence.
Yeah.
You know, it's like sort of post-punk.
Yeah.
Well, disco was coming on, and we wanted to avoid that completely.
Good. You did it. That was smart.
Yes, it was not my style. It was not a songwriter's medium.
Yeah.
But it was just such a great time for music. There was so much to listen to.
Yeah.
And one of my other favorite artists, and this actually started back in '64 because Van Morrison had played in a band called Them.
That's right.
They had
That's
a hit
right.
song called "Here Comes the Night."
I forgot about
which
that.
I absolutely loved. I had that 45 also.
Now, was that the same song that Patti Smith later redid? I'm not sure
I don't
about
remember
that.
if she did that or not.
Yeah,
I
same
know
type-
she did a
same
couple.
type.
They did. Everybody was doing Springsteen
Yep.
songs then too, which I did not include today. But he's also one of my favorite songwriters and performers.
I'll get to some of that later in the show.
Okay.
For you.
Yes, good.
So Van Morrison and another iconic song on your list today, a title song from his first studio album.
Is it his first? Was it before?
That I mean, in the research I did,
'cause
but maybe I'm
Astro
off.
Weeks, I think, came out before this.
Okay.
But it wasn't a big hit. It was a little more ethereal, but it was great songwriting also.
Yeah.
But this was like the big breakthrough for Van Morrison, and I love this song still.
It's Moondance, WEFT.
Can I just have one moment dance with you, my love?
WEFT, my favorite vinyl, with Van Morrison and Moondance. Phil Strang, we would be remiss if we did not talk about your art. We've talked about your musical influences and your great entrepreneurial work. You're still an entrepreneur. Talk about your art.
Well, thank you. I always dabbled in art. Matter of fact, for 30 plus years, I did all the advertising for record service. So I was
Gotcha.
a commercial artist. I took radio and TV and advertising courses in school.
Yeah.
And that was how I used it. And I felt like, between Accounting 101 and all the musical and creative stuff I did, and I worked for the TV station at one point, that eventually, when the store closed, I was free to do my own art.
Right.
So starting in about 2003, 2004, I started to explode artistically. And actually, I started painting on glass because
Really?
we had all this glass at record service from shelves and from dividers.
Sure.
And I thought, I guess I could paint on glass. And then I had to find out what kind of paint to use. And I did 125 paintings the first year.
Wow.
I'm going, oh, wow, this is so different. And I thought, instead of being the 10th best watercolorist in town, I'll be the only person painting on glass. And so that was what sent me in that direction.
Gotcha.
And,
Had you painted before?
I'd done
Some art, okay.
But yeah, mostly, I painted a mural on the wall of my bedroom in high school.
Gotcha.
So I always had that taste of it. And my older sister always encouraged it, and she would take me to art galleries. And I remember going to the cloisters and seeing all the tapestries with unicorns and stuff. And one of my first paintings was one of those tapestries with a lady and the unicorn on it.
Well, your art's very eclectic and very varied. I mean, from landscape and flowers to Western art to more abstract.
That's true. I did a lot of Westerns for a while because that was where I was growing up, I was into Westerns, and I thought I could do a lot of paintings. And eventually I used most of them in the book I put out 5 years ago called
right.
Wild Phil.
Right.
And it's all takes place in the West from 1865 to 1885, which was a lot of fun. It's all sold out, but maybe, if you're lucky, you can see a copy at the library in Urbana. I know they have one.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Well, if people want to find out more about you and about your art, where's the best place to go?
Well, I set up at the Urbana Market at the Square outside all summer, every Saturday morning,
Yes.
unless it rains or my wife says we're going on vacation, which I can't deny.
No,
and
listen.
then I also have a wall at the Tuscola Vault, the Vault Art Gallery in Tuscola, which is
great.
just half hour, 35 minutes south of here.
Kind of permanent exhibit.
Yeah, and I change stuff out on it every month or two, so there's a lot of stuff there. But I also have a website that's one-phil-strang.pixels.com.
Gotcha.
And it gives you a full 750 examples of my art.
Yeah.
It doesn't sell the originals, but you can get prints and
Awesome.
cups and a mug. You can get a mug with one of my paintings on it.
Well, that's fantastic. And if you didn't catch that, you can. We got to remember to say hello to our YouTube viewers. We will be archiving this on YouTube, so we can play this back and forth and make sure you get that URL. Well, I can't thank you enough for coming in
Thank you.
and doing this. And before you go, we have one more song for you to play and talk
Can
about
I say
this
just
one.
three? Yeah,
Absolutely.
Good. Well, Little Feat album came out in 1971.
Yes.
And we loved, at the store, we loved it. And at the store, if everybody liked it, it would get played twice a day, and we would turn it on to people.
Sure.
And we'd sell, and it would make it into our top 10, and that would get radio stations to play it. It was just a wonderful symbiosis back then. And back then I was actually in a band called Bloom and Brownfield, and we convinced our folk singer who led the band to actually do this song, which was wonderful. And I've always loved Little Feat, and I always loved Lowell George, and I was so sad when he died so young.
Yeah. Well, I like the version that you picked out too. It's the first version
Yes.
of Willin. Sailing Shoes was the first one off the album. Sailing Shoes was the first time I was indoctrinated into the song. But we're going to give this a self-titled, like you said, Little Feat, 1971.
Yep.
And Willin, thanks again for listening and for being here. This is WEFT.
I've been worked by the rain, driven by the snow. I